Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video, we're comparing a Mercedes G-Wagon to a Jeep Wrangler Rubicon 392. We have two crazy high-performance off-road SUVs with V8s under the hood, so should be a pretty exciting comparison for today's video. But before we get in the video, I do want to mention if you want to save time and money the next time you purchase a car, link to my car buying guide in the description down below. Let's get right into the video. Now, starting things under the hood of the Jeep, we have a naturally aspirated 6.4-liter Hemi V8 that goes through an 8-speed automatic transmission. It's good for 470 horsepower and then 470 pound-feet of torque. Now, this Wrangler has the Xtreme Recon package, and so that means that it has a 4.56 axle ratio. Jeep states the 0 to 60 time is 4.1 seconds, but this feels just as quick as my TRX, and so I'd have to say the 0 to 60 time is more realistically under 4 seconds, and all you need to know, is it's a quick vehicle, and yeah, just crazy to see that engine stuffed under the hood. Again, a naturally aspirated 6.4-liter Hemi. I love the gold accent and the carbon fiber, just a cool look overall. And of course, you got to do the little latches, which are easy to close on the 392. Popping over to the G-Wagon, we have a twin-turbo 4-liter V8 that goes through a 9-speed automatic transmission. It's good for 577 horsepower and 627 pound-feet of torque. 0 to 60 time is stated to be 3.9 seconds. All you need to know for this comparison is this feels about the same as the Jeep from an acceleration perspective. This is a little bit heavier than the Wrangler, but the Wrangler has better gearing for acceleration, right? And so that's kind of why the times are so similar. The G550 is slower than both of these, if you're wondering from an acceleration perspective. Now, popping back over to the 392. This is my personal 392, and it's finished in Tuscadero pink. I love the color. It's obviously is not like a crazy masculine color like you might expect with a vehicle that's powered by a 6.4-liter V8, but I think it looks great. Anyways, 392 logo there. Notice all the bronze accenting that goes along with the 392 package, which contrasts very nicely to the pink, if I do say so myself. You can see the Hydro Guide there at the center portion. Again, that just adds to the aggressive appearance. Like as soon as you see this pull up, you just know that it means business. And then, like I said, those are really easy to latch because the hood for the 392 is so heavy that it just falls right down, unlike a traditional Wrangler hood, like with a Rubicon, for example. So it's kind of like a benefit with the 392. Anyways, you've got the LED turn signals, accent lights, and then you can see the accent lights around the headlights, and then you can see just how bright those headlights are. Now, this has the satin front grille, which also just adds to the aggression. Steel bumper group with the bronze tow hooks. Thing that's nice about that is that's already off-road ready from the factory. You got the fog lights integrated into it, and you can add a winch to that bumper. So there's a lot of stuff to accommodate, off-road applications. Now, popping over to the G63. This one has a G manufacturer, I'm sorry if I'm saying that improperly, paint color. It's basically a satin / matte paint. They call it matte, but it kind of has more of a satin type finish, but it's olive and it looks great. You can see the turn signal indicators there on the hood, which just looks so cool with the Mercedes-Benz logo. And notice we have the LED accent lights that are super similar to the Jeeps, and same thing with the headlights. It's almost like they're sharing them, which is kind of funny, but that's just every SUV in this off-road, cool boxy design segment has they all have round headlights. And then the giant Mercedes logo. And you can see you've got the brush guard here at the bottom. That's one of the ways to tell it's a G63 because the G550 has it higher up. It goes over the headlights, and then just notice all the aggressive venting, parking sensors, and again, it just has that cool boxy off-roader type appearance, and just kind of a different approach to the military off-road themed SUV basically. And yeah, that paint color on this G63 just is absolutely phenomenal. Now, popping back to the Wrangler, we've got 17-inch wheels, 35s wrapped around those 17-inch wheels. Again, this has the Xtreme Recon package, which gives you 35s from the factory. It also slightly lifts this over a regular 392. So You guys can see those wheels are beadlock capable. I'll talk about the lift in just a moment. And then notice the wheels also bronze, right, to match the rest of the theme. So a regular 392 has a 2-inch lift. This has a 2.5-inch lift over a Rubicon. So this is like 4.5 inches higher than a base model Wrangler. That is just crazy to think about. Now, you guys can see here with the whole suspension, bump stop situation and axle, the Wrangler still uses a solid front axle. That's something that the G-Wagon has gone away from. The new G-Wagon actually has independent front suspension. It still has a solid rear axle, but it has independent front suspension. So that changes, you know, off-road capability, but then also on-road ride quality. It's a big deal. So if you guys are wondering if you've never driven a vehicle with a solid front axle, with a solid front axle, the steering is kind of floaty all over the place. And, you know, suspension feels relatively compliant when you go over most bumps, but if you go over a big enough bump where you actually hit the bump stop, it hits hard, whereas independent front suspension is just a little bit better at taking it. Now, you notice we got the body painted fender flares, giant fender flares in normal Wrangler fashion, and then the mirrors and everything. You guys will see a lot of plastic here with the Wrangler because, again, ultimately it's a Wrangler, right? And then you also have those fender flare extensions to fit the 35s, and notice we got rock rails as well. And then this is one of the downsides about the Xtreme Recon is the regular 392 has Fox shocks. The Xtreme Recon just has Mopar shocks, so they're not as good, which, you know, it is what it is, but that's why I'll be changing out the shocks in my Wrangler in the near future. And coming back over to the G-Wagon, now this is what you'll commonly see in G-Wagons is 20s or 22s. With the G63, the smallest wheel you can fit is a 20. With a G550, you can fit an 18-inch wheel. And it's because you guys can see you've got those giant AMG brake rotors and then the caliper as well that just won't allow for a smaller wheel aside from a 20. But you can see you've got these nice aggressive all-terrain tires. They're 33s. It's a little bit smaller than what you have on the Wrangler. And as for the suspension, the one thing that's cool about the G-Wagon is it has adjustable shocks. And then notice here with the fender flares, they're not as crazy and aggressive as what you have on the Wrangler, but they still look great. You got the exhaust tips poking out the side. A lot of black accenting on this particular G-Wagon, which I think looks really nice. But this kind of has more of like a, you know, on-road type deal with it. Yeah, you could take this off-road, but, you know, it doesn't have as much sidewall with the tires, so it's not preferable for off-road. And then here's the key fob. So notice we got the remote start function there, the lock and unlock, got the Jeep logo there in the back, got a little flip-out function with the key fob as well, which is pretty cool. I really like the taillights on the new generation Wrangler, the JL Wrangler, to be exact. I think they've just done a really good job. I prefer them over the Bronco taillights, to be honest. So then since this has the Xtreme Recon and has a 35 on the back, you do have the reinforced little tailgate thing. And then, sorry that my Jeep was dirty. I remember it rained like right before I filmed this video. Got the tow hook down below. And then it's not too difficult to open up the rear. The nice thing is that they split up the tailgate to the window, and so it makes it a little bit lighter to open it up. Storage space back here is pretty solid, and again, because of that boxy design, you guys can see it's just, you know, like a cube for the storage space back there. You've got all those little areas to hold the bolts and everything from the roof if you decide to take it off. And that's one thing mentioned about the Jeep is it is a convertible SUV. You can take this one as the hardtop. You can take it off if you're going to do top-down driving, which definitely changes the driving dynamics and the overall experience. And we'll talk about that at the end of the video. But always window down first and then tailgate second. Don't want to do it the other way around. And yeah, you can see again has a cool off-roader look with the spare tire there on the back. And again, with everything body painted, it definitely matches very nicely, and I think it looks great. And then you can see the aggressive exhaust tips you get with the 392, which is just kind of like the icing on the cake. Now here's a key fob for the Mercedes. You notice it has the AMG logo there on the front, and we've got another AMG logo there on the back as well with the key fob. But unlocking it, opening up, so first off, it makes a really nice clicking sound. Go watch my review on this if you want to hear the clicking sound when you open it up. That's one of the things that Mercedes has nailed. Really nice leather trim. You notice just full-on luxury everywhere here. And then you can see all of the floor mats here, cargo cover in the back. So this kind of takes a normal SUV approach to the rear, and it's not a convertible. That's another thing to mention, but tons of space there in the back, just like the Wrangler. So it's very practical from a storage space perspective. And then the rear is a little bit heavier because the whole window and tailgate system is all combined into one unit versus the Wrangler, right? It's separated. But notice we got our G63 badge here, and again, that latch is cool. And then notice with the lights here, some people say the lights look outdated. It's just, those are G-Wagon lights. It looks more retro. I wouldn't say outdated, I'd say retro. Recovery hook there in the back, and then you got the spare tire carrier, and notice that it's like covered up so that it looks a little bit more luxurious. The one downside is that you're limited with tire size based on how big that carrier actually is. So that is something to mention. Again, it looks so cool from a rear end perspective, I'd say. Hopping here into the Wrangler, you guys can see here with the door panel in the rear, notice we got that bronze stitching that's all over. And then you can see the padding here. Now, as for the seats, the reason the seats are the way they are is so that they're easy to clean off. And you can spray off the interior with the Wrangler. So that's why the material use isn't necessarily the nicest. And that's something that people complain about the 392 because it's so much more expensive than a Rubicon, but the interior is the same. It's just different stitching. Window controls here in the center, and then the outlets and all that stuff. They put as much stuff in the center as possible because you can take the doors off. And then this one has the headliner insulation, which if you're a Wrangler owner, I recommend getting it. It helps out a lot with just, I mean, think about it with a house, right? It makes it so that it's quieter from outside noise, and then also it keeps the heat or cool in, whether it's, you know, summer or winter. Now notice completely different style here with the G-Wagon. Everything is covered in leather. You've got quilted leather there in the door panel, wood trim. You can see there's nice silver trim. It looks fantastic, frankly. But again, it's not an interior that you'd really want to get too dirty necessarily, right? You'd want to keep it as clean as possible. And frankly, these seats are not going to be as easy to clean as the Wrangler because it's nice quilted perforated leather. So, you know, things could get stuck in the perforations and everything. So just, you know, something to kind of understand with what this is going for. And this is just to show that this is, in fact, a factory paint color. It's not a wrap or anything because a lot of people will wrap their cars that color. Climbing controls in the rear with the vents in the rear as well. And then you've got your cup holder armrest, and surprisingly, like legroom and headroom and all that, it's very similar with both of them in the rear, which is kind of interesting to say the least. But front door panel with the Wrangler, and again, it goes to that utilitarian design where everything is, there's a lot of plastic and everything would be easy to clean. And notice again, they minimize the amount of controls on the door panel because you can take it off. Rubicon 392 on the seats, so you can flex to your passengers that you have the V8 version of the Jeep. Notice manual adjustments for the seats. Again, they want to like minimize the electronics because you can spray off the interior. So that's why you're not going to see power adjustable seats on a Jeep, which Ford apparently has figured it out because the Bronco has power seats, or maybe you're just going to lose your power seat function if you decide to spray off your Bronco interior. But anyways, light controls there, steering wheel is manually adjustable. And that's what you notice with the Jeep, a lot of manual adjustments. Now popping to the front of the G-Wagon, you can see again, just really nice leather trim all over, really nice metallic trim, just definitely has that luxury car appearance. You've got all of your window controls, and notice like the fit and finish on all the controls again is all towards that luxury side of things. Heated, cooled seats. You've got a bunch of different seat adjustments that are all power. Another speaker for the Burmester sound system, AMG plaque right there, and then notice the exhaust tips poking out the side of the steps, which obviously those would impede breakover angle a little bit. And then you got your Schockel approved. It's Mercedes proving ground over in like Germany or Switzerland or something like that. I don't know. All I know is it's over in Europe and it's what they off-road the G-Wagons on. Anyways, you can see two-tone seats with the brown in the center and the black on the sides, and then you've got the pedals down below, light controls right there, and then you've got your lane departure, parking sensors, and then notice with the vents and then the leather trim all around. And yeah, that's a quick look there at the initial part of the interior. Popping back over to the Wrangler. Love the startup animation with it. 392. Let you know you got something serious. So here is the steering wheel. I really like the Wrangler steering wheel. So basically what they do is they've got this soft touch leather here at the top and then perforated on the sides, so you get a little bit of a better grip, and it just feels really nice in your hands. And I have a similar steering wheel on my TRX, and I've enjoyed it for the most part. You got nice metallic paddle shifters there in the back. It does have regular cruise control as well as adaptive cruise control. You got controls for the center stack, voice command controls, and then there are radio controls there on the back of the steering wheel. So there's a lot of practicality, right? It's still a modern SUV. And then, of course, your regular stocks, windshield wiper, turn signal stock, you know, the normal stuff. Popping into the gauge cluster, half analog, half screen. So you've got the analog gauges on either side, which I honestly never look at when I'm driving because I just leave it in automatic, so I don't have to worry about the RPMs too much. And I just look at the digital speedometer in the center when I'm driving it. But you can see where the tire pressure is set at, which is higher than when I have it now. I've actually lowered it down to like 34, 35. I might lower it down even more just because the Wrangler suspension is, you know, a little bit on the harsher side. So you got to have the tire pressure lower so you can get a smooth ride quality. But then obviously it kills fuel economy. But you can see what I've been averaging so far as of filming this video. And after filming this video, I'm still in that 13, 14 mile gallon range. So I think that that's pretty solid for having a 4.56 axle ratio and a 6.4 liter Hemi under the hood. And that's mostly around town driving. I haven't done a lot of highway driving either. And then notice here with the camera system, you've got just basically a front camera, backup camera, no 360 camera, but the Wrangler is really good with visibility because of how big the windows are and because of that boxy design. And so you don't really need the side camera views as much as just having the front view, which is nice because of the massive hood. Dual zone climate, heated seats, heated steering wheel, no air conditioned seats. With the Wrangler, it wouldn't make sense because you'd have to make the seats perforated, which would be harder to clean off. And then on top of that, you would have a fan in the seat, and that's something that would go out if you spray it with water, right? So it just doesn't make sense to do perforated cold seats. Anyways, you notice here down below, we've got the analog controls for the climate system, the seats. You've got the exhaust button. Always leave the valves open because it just doesn't sound right with the valves closed. It's quiet. It's friendly to your neighbors, but you bought a 392 for a reason. Off-road cruise control as well. And then it has the off-road pages, which will show you, like, you know, what drive line you're in. And notice that the Jeep is four-wheel auto for the base system. It doesn't have two-wheel drive for the 392. That's one of the biggest differences between a 392 and a regular Wrangler. And it actually makes the steering even more vague on the 392 because it's four-wheel drive all the time, funny enough. But you guys can see like the pitch and roll right there. And then down below, notice we've got a bunch of little charging ports right here. And then you've got our auxiliary items, so you can add light bars and stuff. Only 4 of them, though, 4 switches. You got your off-road plus, right? So that's going to be kind of like a little cheat code to help you out if you are off-roading. A lot of technology in these off-roaders nowadays, which is nice. And then you got your sway bar disconnect, and then you can lock the rear as well as the front and rear at the same time if you'd like. So that definitely adds to the off-road capability. And then the shifter for that 8-speed automatic transmission. And then we got our driveline select. Like I said, 4-wheel auto, and then there's like a 4-wheel high part time is what it says, and then 4-wheel low. But basically you're going to be 4-wheel auto most of the time. Unless you're crawling, then you'll be in 4-wheel low, right? And then you guys can see here with the center console setup. Notice tons of storage space there. Small, but it works. And then glove box as well is also kind of small, but it works. And then you got your grab handle there because it's an off-roader, and then got the metallic gray trim there on the face, which it looks a lot better than the red in the regular Rubicon, frankly. It's just more neutral with the interior. And then, like I said, top insulation. And then with the Wrangler, the front 2 pieces you can take off easily with latches. The back you have to use tools, but still you can take off the entire top. You can take off the doors. You can freaking lower the windshield. Like, you can make it as convertible as you want. I never see anyone lower the windshield, which I think it's interesting that Jeep still allows that. I think that, I don't know, they can do what they want. But notice the base price here, $77,000 for the Wrangler 392. That's before options. Notice the regular axle ratio is 3.73, which in my personal opinion is garbage. If you're going to get a 392, try to get an Xtreme Recon because it just doesn't feel right with a 373 gearing. Or if you get a regular 392, get it re-geared. That's all I got to say. From reviewing and driving both, it's such a big difference. And even if the fuel economy is worse on the Xtreme Recon, it's worth it. It's definitely worth it. But notice I got a few options on mine, and then you can see the total MSRP there, $86,060. So yeah, the price has inflated a bit on these Wranglers, right? But you know, it's just kind of the modern world that we live in at this point. Popping back over to the G63 G-Wagon. Got a cool little startup animation there with the gauge cluster. So here is the steering wheel. As you guys can see, similar theme, right? You've got really nice smooth leather at the top and at the bottom, and then perforated on the sides. You get a little bit of a better grip. We've got these nice metallic paddle shifters. It's almost like Jeep was, you know, trying to copy as much as they could with the 392. And then there's a bunch of practical controls for like the center screen and the infotainment system on the steering wheel, which is really nice. I thought that I wouldn't like them, but they're actually pretty intuitive, and it helps out because this doesn't have a touchscreen. We'll get into that in just a moment, but really nice looking steering wheel. And then here is the center gauge cluster. So it's full digital gauge cluster, which obviously one of the benefits is that it's a lot more customizable and it just looks a little bit more modern. But I guess the downside is it'll look dated once there's nicer gauge clusters in the future. And compared to some gauge clusters out there, it already does kind of look slightly, especially compared to Mercedes' newest gauge cluster. This isn't the newest version, so it does look a little bit dated. But I think it's fine. And you can see there's a bunch of different information you can see, and basically all the stuff you can control in the infotainment system, you can also control here in the gauge cluster. And also look at the designs you can go through. Progressive I thought looked pretty cool. And then you got like your classic as well, which is what I usually see them set in. But yeah, I think that Mercedes has done a good job with the G63. Now, infotainment system, this is the controversial part. We'll kind of get into that. First off, got a really nice camera system on the G63. So you've got like this 360 camera system. The regular G550 just has a backup camera. They kind of did a weird thing with that. So yeah, $130,000 vehicle starting price, and it only has a backup camera. As for the rest of the infotainment system, again, not a touchscreen. There's a dial and there's a keypad to control the infotainment system. And I'm kind of mixed about it. So first off, like, the dial's really easy to use, but I've also used Mercedes' newest infotainment system, and so I kind of have like the knowledge of both. And you can see massaging seats. That's another big thing. Heated, cooled massaging seats in the G-Wagon. But I found myself, even with Mercedes' newest infotainment system, not using the touchscreen function as much. I was using either the steering wheel or the dial, so take that for what it is. Vents on the other side, and then we've got the off-road tech. So we have a center, rear, and front locker with the G63. A lot of people ask about the center locker. So basically, if you have everything locked, center, front, and rear, all of the wheels are going to be getting like perfectly equal power, and everything's going to be going at like the same rate. So it's going to like be able to crawl up anything once you have that set up. But it's ordered 1, 2, and 3. So you go center first, rear second, and then front third. Climate controls down below. It's nice you have analog buttons for that. Got wood trim that covers a couple of cup holders. Love the grain on it. It's definitely a really nice fit and finish. Again, it's full-blown luxury car, right? And then so you got the keypad, which is okay. I prefer the dial down below the keypad, right? That's just a little bit easier to use compared to the keypad, but both of them are fine. And then, of course, you got to have the exhaust valve open, just like the Jeep. You guys heard the exhaust clips at the beginning. They both sound nice. Got your low range as well, which is another important off-road thing. And then, again, the adjustable suspension here. So you can basically make the suspension softer or firmer. The G550, you can also get that as an option. It's standard on the 63. And you get your drive modes, which you notice will adjust a bunch. You guys probably noticed with the Jeep, there is no drive modes. It's like you have a 392 Hemi and you have an exhaust valve. You're either full throttle, exhaust open, or you're not full throttle and not exhaust open. But it's like you get the 392 all the time. But this, you've got a bunch of different drive modes. Notice there's not like a off-road mode with the G63, which is kind of funny, but it's because they don't expect anyone to take them off-road actually, which, yeah. There's an off-road mode for the G550 though. Notice the leather trim there. And on the side looks great. Got the grab handle, just like the Wrangler. Notice it says G Manufacturer, and sorry if I'm not pronouncing that properly. But yeah, definitely a cool aesthetic. And then the glove box is a little bit more practical in the Jeep. It's a little bit larger. It's a little bit more of a normal glove box. And everything's covered in nice materials with the G-Wagon. And then popping up top again, you can't take the roof off. We've got a sunroof though. And then really nice premium headliner. So definitely, again, is more well insulated and kind of more luxury look. Now, in terms of pricing, here's the deal. So we all know that both these vehicles are going for massive premiums over sticker, and they're actually pretty similar premiums. Like I've seen a bunch of 392s going for like $50,000 over sticker, just like G-Wagons are going for $50,000 to $100,000 over sticker. So let's just talk about the MSRPs. So with the Wrangler, $86,000. Base model G-Wagon is $131,000 before market adjustment, obviously. Fully loaded G550 is like $160-ish. And then a G63 is like $20,000 more than a G550, basically. So a fully loaded G63, and you're close to like that $200,000 mark before market adjustment, but after market adjustment, it's like a $300,000 car, whereas the Wrangler after market adjustment is like a $130,000 car. And then the fully loaded G550 is like a $230,000 car, roughly is what I've seen in terms of them selling online. So what you guys really need to know is there's probably, depending on the package to package, there's either going to be like a $100,000 to maybe almost, not quite, but almost $200,000 price difference between the vehicles, which is a huge price difference. But it's a completely different demographic for both the vehicles. The Wrangler, right, has been made for off-road use only, pretty much. Yes, you can drive it on road, but you can take off like half the vehicle. You can take off the top, you can take off the doors, you can take the windshield down, all that kind of stuff. And so from a driving experience perspective on road, there's a lot of compromises. And you basically make that up with tons of off-road capability. I mean, that Wrangler 392 with the Xtreme Recon package can tackle pretty much anything that you throw at it. Whereas with the G-Wagon, whether it's a G550 or a G63, they are just like full-blown luxury cars on road. You still get some wind buffeting because it is a block of cheese, just like the Wrangler, right? It's a boxy vehicle. So you do get some wind buffeting, but really comfortable seats, and there's a lot less wind noise, and there's just a lot less road noise, and suspension's way more compliant, way more comfortable. And they do have off-road capability. Again, it has a center, front, and rear locker. It has low range, right? It's got 2-speed transfer case. And with the G550, you can put smaller wheels, 18-inch wheels, and 33-inch tires on it with a factory setup. No problem whatsoever. So you can make it into an off-road machine. It just wouldn't be able to do all the stuff that the Jeep would be able to do, not from a grip perspective. It grips amazingly well, and it has really good suspension flex. It just doesn't have the same ground clearance, right? The G-Wagon, if you get a solid setup on it, you're going to be in that like 10-inch range from a ground clearance perspective, whereas the Wrangler, you're almost 13 inches. Those extra 3 inches do matter. They do matter, trust me. And so just basically the way that I look at this is, if you're looking at this from like a value standpoint, yeah, the Wrangler, you're basically getting a vehicle that accelerates just as quickly and has more off-road capability, but it isn't going to give you the same luxury experience. And so it's kind of like the value play, whereas with the G-Wagon, right, I feel like with that, if you do a few modifications on it, and obviously the same thing, you could do some modifications with the Wrangler, but a few modifications on the G-Wagon, and it would be just as capable as a Wrangler off-road, and you wouldn't have to concede anything, but there's a big price premium to pay for that. So you just have to decide, is that price premium really worth it? And yeah, that's the comparison.